Hello there, and here I am talking to you now about some of the decisions I had to make and some of the challenges in practicing this little prelude number 2 in C minor by J.S. Bach. It's one page, that's it, and yet it's a beastly little thing, not because there are a lot of notes, but because it's so spry. And there are multiple ways that one could interpret this. Of course, that is always the case, particularly with Bach, because when you are working from an Urtext edition, such as this, an Urtext meaning it's the original and not edited by someone who decided to put in a crescendo where there was none by Bach, or a pedal marking, or some fingerings where Bach put none. When you're working with the Urtext, you've got like the original from the man himself. And so you don't have markings to do with how fast you should play, how loud, how slow, if you should play something detached or legato, separated or connected and smooth. All of these decisions, even with regards to ornaments, these kinds of little decorations, much of the time are not even written on the page, because way back in the day, in Bach's time, in the Baroque, a lot of those decisions would just be made sort of spontaneously by the performer. And when you're playing a piece like this, which is a binary form, it's a dance piece, and pretty well every dance piece that I know from the Baroque is in binary form. 2-part, an A section and a B section, each marked by a repeat sign. And unless you're doing an exam where time is of the there's a limited amount of time, then you generally do take the repeats. And of course, the idea is that when you take it the second time around, the listener does not want to hear the exact same thing. They want to hear a few little alterations, and so one has to decide where to add ornaments. So that was another decision, and of course, sometimes it depends on the day. I can't tell you how many times I've changed my ornaments, basically on a daily basis. I change them, but I think what I got here, at least for now, I'm satisfied with. But for one thing, the piece is in 3/4 time, and this suggests a minuet, and those are not terribly fast dances. They're actually kind of a delicate dance, moderate speed, and yet this piece just was not working for me at that speed. And as you heard, the end product was quite quick. I took it something like. Now maybe there are some folks out there who say, "Whoa, horsey, it's too fast." But this piece is just so nimble, and by that I mean that the intervals, or the distance between the notes, and the direction or the contour, whether they go up and down, whether they go consecutively up, consecutively down, or alternating up and down, and how much distance is between those up-down passages, is so inventive and full of variety. And I feel like at a slow tempo, that gets lost. We don't hear that. And I love the get up and go spunk quality in this piece. The one next to it here, number 1, in C major, I mean, this is not nearly as, what was the word I used, nimble? Well, I mean, it's got plenty of moments, but there's a lot of stepwise movement. It's just going straight down, and there's maybe some alternating thirds here and there. But this one, up, down by 6th, up by 5th, down by 6th, a little bit of stepwise, then a broken C minor chord, and then more ragged, jagged leaps. A seventh. Of course, we're getting kind of a diminished seventh chord there. This part, while diatonic, it is, and not quite as nimble and ragged as other passages, but even that too. And then the left hand, certainly, when it has quarter notes, well, actually, it's pretty much all it has. Let me just play you a little bit of the left hand. That's the B section here, this section. And the left hand there is particularly jagged and ragged, like the intervals are like a saw. It goes up by a big leap, then it goes down by a big leap. I mean, just in three bars, it's covered this much of the piano. And none of that was by step. Oh, just a handful of notes moved by step. But it's very ragged. And I think that is just so delicious and tickling to the ear. It's kind of like one of those, I don't know, like maybe a Jackson Pollock kind of a painting where there's activity all over. There's no focal point. It's kind of everywhere is equally intense and something is happening. And I feel like this is like a Jackson Pollock for the ears, maybe, is a good way. And it's just so fun to hear that. Now, obviously, the right hand has more notes. It's got twice as many notes as the left hand. The right hand is moving in eighth notes, left hand is moving in quarter notes. So 2 to 1 for the most part in this little piece. But that doesn't mean that the left hand is less important. Oh my goodness. And I was thinking about this in terms of, because I do love left-handed playing. I really love to hear equal participation from both hands, if not a little bit more from the left than the right. And I was thinking of a general rule that I'm subconsciously thinking about in terms of when to let the left hand sort of speak out more. And I think these decisions are guided by repetition in this music. So when you have something, a rhythmic pattern that repeats, such as in a sequence, repeats down a step, that's a sequence. We have another sequence. That previous one was measure 5 through 8, and then here measure 9 through 11. Repeats down a step. Repeats, or at least starts to repeat again, down a step. Any of these places as well, I think in the B section too, you can get a little bit more creative with it. But when something repeats at least 3 times, and I've noticed this is very common in Bach's music. He does tend to repeat things in 3s. Many times just 2 repetitions, but a lot of time it's in 3. And then the 4th will begin perhaps and then veer off into something else. But when you have those opportunities where it repeats at least 2, if not 3 times, then what I kind of like to do, and this is not fixed by any stretch of the imagination, and much of it is sort of comes just with how I'm feeling that day, because every day is different. I would never, I won't play it the same way tomorrow as I did yesterday or today. But generally, when something happens in 3s, you can use the first 2 to the first two times to, voice one hand in particular, maybe the right hand, and then on that third time, maybe initiate the right hand's presence in the very onset of that third statement, and then immediately usurp it with the left hand and have it boldly take charge. Maybe this part in the beginning of the B section. Now, this is not a sequence, but this is the rhythm, so that's very repetitive, just non-stop eighth notes, and the left hand is just non-stop quarter notes. So rhythmically speaking, both hands are very repetitive through this whole piece. And that is a particular spot in the B section where the left hand gets extra ragged and jagged and disjunct and leaping all over the place, with some chromaticism too. So there you could perhaps initiate more right hand because it's the beginning of a new section, and obviously the higher pitch notes we hear those a little bit more automatically, and it has perhaps a little bit more melodic content. Maybe continue the right hand through here, and then perhaps start to exchange the dominant hand and make the left hand kind of gradually take over. Like here, by the time you get to this spot at 26, there's a little moment of stepwise movement in there. It's kind of fun. Let me go back to the sequence at 5. So here, I think it's nice to give the right hand the speaking role there. And then maybe as it gets to the end of that, maybe that last one can be the left. The left hand starts to project, and then carry on with some more left. And then maybe towards the end of that, when it's got the highest note in the right hand there, the G. Also, as I mentioned in another video, when you have sequences in Bach, such as this one, rather than giving all of those notes absolutely equal amount of sound and energy, look for the big picture architecture or structure of it. So I think at measure 5, and then measure 9, C, B flat, A flat, rather than hearing everything absolutely equal. But if you can pinpoint stepwise descents or ascents, going down or up, descending, ascending, long-term big picture descents and ascents within the span of many, many notes, then you'll give your ear something to hold on to. So that would be, and both of those sequences move, listening in this fashion, that is, both of them move in a stepwise. The first one is ascending. I'm at measure 5. E flat, la, la, la. Sorry, that one, it's descending, my bad. E flat, D flat, or sorry, D, C, B, A flat. Those two sequences continue one swoop, one very long descending stepwise pattern. Yeah, and of course in some of those other spots where the thumb has a repeated note, measure 6, the C in the thumb, or measure 8, the B flat in the thumb. We want to give less to those, less sound, less weight from your upper arm and back on the repeated notes, and more depth of tone, more weight from your back and upper arm, excuse me, on the changing notes. So when I would practice this, and very little on the notes, I need a drink of water. Yeah, and less on those notes that are repeated. Also, too, you may have noticed, I tend to, in addition to liking an active left hand that's an equal player in Bach's music, I also love to take momentary little indulgences of a bit of extra time on certain notes. In often cases, it's a tied note, and we have some of those here. And I think those, not all of them, you don't want to become predictable every time you come to a tied note, jam on the brakes. No, but here and there, and of course when you take the repeat and you do it differently the second time, you can change it up a little bit. But this piece has a number of tied notes in it, and it can be fun to linger just for a moment. But if you linger, you take a little bit of time, you have to be sure that you voice the note you're lingering on. Otherwise, it's just sort of dead air, dead sound. But you also then immediately have to move the tempo after you've lingered, and then send it along. Otherwise, then it just drags and dies. We don't want that. And again, when things happen in 3, like this little pattern at 16, 17, 18, 3 times. So first time, second time, third time. There are 3 tied notes there. Those are the 3 tied notes. In my little recording I did, I lingered on the last one. I got something like this. Let me try to do it again. It's like you've been watching something, and then you slow, like you're fast forwarding a film or something, and then just like you put it into half speed. Just suspend it in time for a moment, and then you send it on its way. If you don't move it again, as I say, it dies. Maybe something. Let me try to make it die. I don't generally try to make it die on purpose, but let's try. Right, so I took the time there, but I didn't immediately move it along again after the time, and I think it just, it's like the ball is dropped. The water balloon has been punctured. In terms of the ornaments, as I say, when you take these binary dance form pieces from the Baroque, you take the repeat and you do something different. So I added, there were some cases where the notes were moving by skip or by third, such as measure 5, from E natural to C, and I added a little 4-note gesture. So the original was, and I added, which I thought was kind of nice, and I did it at the same time because it's a sequence. So without the decoration, with the decoration, you have to be very quick and have energized fingertips, because these notes, some of them are white and black notes, and the fingers A viewer commented before on some of the pieces and how, you know, when you're playing with a lot of black notes, and especially if you have fat fingers, you can kind of get stuck, especially if you have to play fast. So I get it. My fingers are not terribly fat, but they are kind of thick. And for romantic music, I'm fine. But for this, sometimes it's tricky, because Bach's instruments were not the modern piano. The modern piano, as we know it, is from about 1875, and Bach died in 1750. So his instrument was much more fragile, lightweight, portable, quieter, without all these pedals and without the cast iron plate and the enormous string tension. And the keys also were narrower and shorter. And you couldn't play loud and soft either on the harpsichord. And then there's some other places where I added, actually in the next bit, measure 8 and measure 9. So the original goes like this. So again, there were those notes were moving by skip, C to A flat, and I just filled it in. There's a skip at the end of that bar, measure 9. You could fill that in, and this is where I got to, you know, changing my mind, changing it back. I had it like this, but then you can't do it the next time around because the interval is a little bit different. So, and it's nice to be consistent. So, so I ended up putting the little decoration on the downbeat, and then that works. And then later on at the end of the beat, and then I added some mordents. I need to research that word, because mor means like death. But as far as I know, mordents don't have anything to do with death. I could be wrong. But it's that little turn that looks like a letter M with a slash through it. And it just means to play down a step. But here I added them on the tied notes in measure 16, 17, and 18. Let me play it the original first. And that was the place where I was sort of lingering for a moment. And then with the mordent, and the mordent with a little bit of time is like an extra bit of chocolate sauce. It's nice to add a touch of pedal on ornaments in general, especially mordents that are on a tied note or a long note. Pedal, pedal. You can't see my foot, but where I say pedal, my foot is going down, and it helps to warm the sound. Sometimes on an upright piano you don't hear it so much, the effect of subtle pedaling, but doesn't mean you shouldn't aim for it, because the more sensitive your ear becomes to hearing really subtle things, the more things it'll be able to pick out, and colors. And of course, when you go to play ornaments, it's good to come from above the key rather than right on the key, but rather, because it lets your arm and your hand sort of relax, and then you've got coming down into the key the natural arm weight and gravity, and that of course also adds warmth to the sound. Combined with the foot, it's like a hug for the ears. And then the other little question that I was working on, what do I do? In terms of articulation, I tried it very legato. But that just was not lighting my fire, as Jim Morrison would say. And then I tried it ultra detached, almost staccato. And that was sort of lighting my fire. But yet when I got to the second time around with the ornaments, it was just impossible to sustain any melodic lightness and suppleness to those gestures without them becoming almost robotic. So, and then I reverted back to my beloved semi-detached style of touch. Sorry. If I slow it down, you can hear just hopefully, the slightest little bit of space between the notes. Like almost barely coming out of the key in between. And it takes a lot of finger strength to do that. But I've talked about some of the exercises that I do. There they are. These ones that I always preach about. Those are very good. Also practicing staccato in a very forte, loud kind of way gets your fingers strong. With a loose wrist, energize tips of the fingers. And of course, a hand position that's curved and not flat. Because good luck getting a nice crisp tone in Bach with ultra flat fingers. Flat fingers do work for other things, for warmth and legato melodies, or if you just want to come down like a laser beam and really get a penetrating sound on a long note. But otherwise, curved is good. Yeah. And tempo, I think I briefly touched on that. The other thing too with this is that this little piece in C minor uses all of the notes in all the 12 notes in the chromatic scale. C all the way up to B. 12 notes, all the keys within an octave are in this piece, which says a lot because this music is, these are little pieces, and it's like the next one, or the previous one, number 1 in C major, it's got 10 out of 12 of the chromatic pitches. But this one, number 2, it's got 12 out of 12. So there's quite a bit of chromaticism. And when you combine it with those jagged, disjunct leaps, especially in the left hand, as I mentioned, that just, again, tickles the ear so much. And you got to think of your hands as speakers, as participants, and they both have something to say. And or like the audio in your car, when you adjust, you can adjust it to the left, or so you hear more right. You know, most people put it in the middle, I think. And I do too. But in terms of playing, I like to turn that dial sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, sometimes in the middle, because it becomes like a surround sound almost when you hear both parts poking through it, you know, moving this way and that way, and like they're in a maze and they're trying to get out. So, yeah. And this gesture too, when I finish my pieces, oftentimes, if it's a lively kind of a piece, usually one of my hands will do like a bird flying up. That is just a continuation of the movement that has been going through my arm. I just can't just stop that movement. It's got to go somewhere. That's the movement that's been going on throughout the piece. Because this gesture, it's going up, it's the end of the piece, it's very assertive and sturdy and strong, and you have to, I got my Steinway sweater on, and my New York Rangers cap. I'm very New York influenced today. But the gesture that my arm is doing is this kind of a thing, to get that thrust of the upward gesture. So naturally, that kind of vigorous thrust cannot just be stopped because the note has stopped. It has to, you know, continue and then sort of fade itself out. Anyhow, that's some rambling from me about this little C minor prelude. So we'll see you in the next video for the last of these 6 little preludes. Of course, Bach wrote a number of sets of little preludes, and I'm hoping to learn more of those. But this particular set of little preludes has one more video coming up. In the meantime, stay well, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.